This is Mordecai. He loves video games, coffee, and slacking off with his best friend Rigby. But did you know he's also a simp? And he's also a bad friend. And he's also the worst character in the show. Or at least that's what the internet would like you to believe. But in reality, if you've seen the show all the way through, you'd know that none of these things are really true. It all started years ago on Twitter, not X, Twitter, when a post asked, who's the bigger simp, Mordecai from Regular Show or Finn from Adventure Time? And a lot of people said Mordecai, and then simp compilations started popping up, people were making videos calling him the biggest simp in cartoon history. It pretty much became the internet's view of his entire character. With him being one of my favorite characters, I decided to make a video on the topic defending him, taking an in-depth look at both shows all the way through instead of relying on YouTube simp compilations. And in the end, I came to the conclusion that Finn is absolutely the bigger simp by a landslide. At his worst, Mordecai caused secondhand embarrassment, but some of the things Finn did were straight up abusive, manipulative, and downright evil. I know he's a teenager throughout the series, which should excuse some clumsiness with girls, but the abuse and manipulation? No way. Especially when characters like Dipper, who's even younger than that, got over his feelings for Wendy within a single summer. But anyways, I made that video and I figured that was the end of it. But years later, the conversation came back, and it evolved into Mordecai's also a bad friend, with clips from Rigby's graduation day special popping up. And with both the simp and bad friend accusations combined, he was eventually labeled as the worst character in the show, which is actually kind of absurd. So I'm here making another video defending my boy, and we're gonna take another look at these big moments in Rigby's graduation day special, dumped at the altar, and so much more to figure out Mordecai's true character. Because I think he's great. So let's begin with Chapter 1. Let's begin with the topic that started it all, the simpiness. Okay, so first of all, the very definition of simp doesn't anywhere near fit what people are trying to say about Mordecai. A simp is someone who views women as objects for their personal pleasure or gain, believing their attention and affection can simply be won over with money or favors. Simply being stuttery or nervous about girls like Mordecai is doesn't really make him a simp. It's a completely separate character trait entirely, and one that 90% of cartoon protagonists share. Now, there is one moment from the episode Cruisin' that went around, where Margaret's date walks up to Mordecai and thanks him for paying for their meal. But that clip is completely out of context. The episode is about Mordecai and Margaret forming a bet to see if he can get a girl's number with a cool car by the end of the day, the loser having to pay for the winner and their date's dinners. But not only did Mordecai win the bet, so Margaret ended up having to pay for him, but Rigby was right there with him the whole time, also partaking in the bet. Would that make Rigby a simp too? That's why you should just watch the show and not random YouTube simp compilations. But what about Mordecai sniffing Margaret's sweater? I mean, come on. Definitely seems very weird at first glance, but you have to remember that before this, Mordecai and Margaret were actually dating, in a real official relationship. And if Margaret was leaving her clothes at Mordecai's place and getting it mixed up with his laundry, you know it wasn't just puppy love going on. They were serious, and as odd as it may sound to those who haven't experienced a real relationship that serious before, recognizing your partner's scent is a real and genuine form of intimacy. Now, if they were never together and Margaret didn't share Mordecai's feelings at all, then that would be super weird and stalkerish. But since they were, let's actually take a look at Mordecai and Margaret's relationship. Margaret as a character often gets defined by the trait of having a new boyfriend every week, according to the internet. However, throughout the entire show, this is something that only occurs twice, both of which are in the first season, with caffeinated concert tickets and Mordecai and the Rigbys. Once we get into the second season and the crew behind the show decides, oh hey, we actually get to make more episodes and develop these characters, Margaret shows no signs of that trait at all, and their relationship begins to develop. It appears one-sided for Mordecai at first, but then Margaret starts to throw flirts at him, and trusts him with more personal stuff. She even plans her entire birthday party around wanting to dance with Mordecai at a club. And eventually they become official. Mordecai meets Margaret's family, they leave clothing at each other's house like I mentioned before, and everything's going great until Margaret gets accepted into her dream school. Yeah, Mordecai didn't screw up here. He didn't fumble. Margaret was honestly all for it. If it weren't for getting accepted into her school, I could honestly see them being together forever. But what about CJ, and Mordecai's breakup with her and dumped at the altar? What is widely considered to be his worst moment in the entire series. And yeah, even I have to say this is really bad, hijacking your friend's wedding and breaking up with your girlfriend in front of everyone. There's not really much of a defense for this, but Mordecai didn't just wake up that morning and decide to do this. Earlier that day, despite the awkward feelings left from Margaret admitting she still has feelings for Mordecai, Mordecai was pretty set on sticking with CJ, until Rigby kept pestering him and made him question if he was sure, even when he knows how clumsy Mordecai can be with girls and relationships. And Muscle Man was the one who asked Mordecai to speak for him. Now, he didn't ask Mordecai to hijack the wedding and break up with his girlfriend in front of everyone, but it definitely didn't come out of nowhere. The whole episode, and in fact the whole season, was building up to this. So to see where things went wrong, let's look back at Mordecai and CJ's relationship, which I'm honestly not a fan of. Okay, so first and foremost, CJ was pretty toxic and abusive. In their first encounter, Mordecai made it very clear he wasn't looking to date or be in a relationship at the moment, and it seemed at first that CJ completely understood. And yes, while it was absolutely scummy for Mordecai to make plans with Margaret that he already made with CJ, the reason CJ got upset is because she assumed Mordecai liked her and wanted to date her. And the way she expressed getting upset was by turning into a storm cloud and physically assaulting Mordecai. And this is something she does multiple times throughout their relationship, even harming innocents in the process. Being a straight-up abuser aside, though, she's also just a really boring character in my opinion. Generic cool girl who just happens to have all the same interests as Mordecai, with nothing really special of her own. But regardless, when they do officially start dating later on, things are going pretty well and normal, until Margaret comes back. And remember, Mordecai didn't fumble Margaret, they never officially broke up. Margaret just got into her dream school and still very much had feelings for Mordecai. And despite it being very clear that Mordecai and Margaret couldn't handle being around each other, Margaret made several attempts to still be friends with Mordecai and CJ. Instead of setting boundaries, CJ made attempts to be friends with Margaret, and even Eileen and Rigby were setting CJ, Mordecai, and Margaret up to all be friends again. And all of this built up into what we got in Dumped at the Altar. People view this as Mordecai fumbling two girls, but I view this as Mordecai dodging two bullets. Margaret couldn't respect a relationship, and CJ couldn't set boundaries. And Mordecai, being tired of the awkwardness, decided to break it off. When you look at the bigger picture, what happened honestly makes complete sense. The only real bad part was how he did it, hijacking Muscleman's wedding. Dodging those two toxic and abusive bullets and then ending up with a goth Batgirl is honestly a huge W for Mordecai. I don't know how people see this as a bad ending for him. But yeah, Mordecai's not a simp, he just got caught in an awkward love triangle. But we've spent long enough here, time for Chapter 2! Mordecai is not a bad friend to Rigby. I say as Mordecai is currently ending Rigby on screen. I'm just messing around, but seriously. Completely obliterating your best friends over the tiniest reasons is honestly very common in regular show. Even the more mature characters like Skips does it over arm wrestling. Rigby himself even threatened to get Mordecai, Margaret, and Eileen taken out if Mordecai didn't self-sabotage their date. And he bet all his friends' souls over a bowling ball. But let's go back to that specific episode. It's time. The episode opens up with Rigby making plans with Mordecai that Mordecai didn't even know about, and then he gets upset at Mordecai for already having plans of his own. So to get back at Mordecai for flaking on him, which he never did, Rigby spends the entire rest of the episode hitting on his best friend's crush and then rubbing it in his face. And then when it comes to that big moment, Rigby is the one who pushes Mordecai first. But what about the more grounded situations, like kicking Rigby out of the car in laundry rows when he was trying to help Mordecai get over Margaret, or in Rigby's graduation day special when he was jealous of Rigby graduating? And yeah, those were both very messed up things to do, but eventually he always realizes his mistakes. He goes back and apologizes, admits to everything, and does his best to make it up to Rigby. And he always realizes these mistakes and fixes them all by himself. When Rigby does similar things to Mordecai, he often runs off to Skips or someone else looking for how to fix things while also getting off scot-free, not taking any responsibility until it's pretty much spelled out for him. Even in the regular show movie where the main plot is about how bad of a friend Rigby is to Mordecai, Father Time quite literally has to give him the answer to redemption. And on top of everything, these moments where Mordecai is pretty scummy to Rigby are very few and far between. I don't know. Mordecai being labeled as a bad friend to Rigby for his actions in 3 to 4 episodes out of a 240 episode series, while Rigby gets off scot-free for having a 6.5 season long reign of terror, is pretty wild to me. People always talk about how great Rigby's character development is and how he gets better as the show goes along, but not really. Even in seasons 5 and 6, there are still episodes where Rigby flakes on Mordecai at work, promises to cover for him and then doesn't, throws him under the bus, gets him into trouble, and even gets jealous when Mordecai spends a bit more time with CJ than he spends with Rigby. Heck, even all the way in season 7, just a few episodes before Rigby's big graduation arc, there's an episode all about how Rigby never does anything for Mordecai's birthday and just gets presents for himself. Which he's about to do again until he overhears Mordecai talking about it. Look, I love Rigby too. There's not a single character in this entire series that I truly dislike. But if Mordecai is a bad friend to Rigby, then Rigby is a full-on enemy to Mordecai. But now on to chapter 3! Mordecai being the worst character in regular show is the most wild claim yet. Just based on actions alone, Rigby is a very strong contender for that spot. But he's funny. He's a jerk, but an entertaining jerk, so that makes up for it. No, but for real, you can't say Mordecai is the worst character in the show when Quips exists. And as far as the main cast goes, I haven't heard anyone say anything positive about Starla, and I've heard so much hate for Thomas. All of those characters were pretty much despised throughout the entire run of regular show, and no one said a word about Mordecai. Mordecai hate literally didn't start until this whole simping meme on Twitter. Aside from those 3 to 4 episodes out of regular show's 240 plus episode run, Mordecai's overall just a pretty chill and good dude. He gets into trouble sometimes, but usually fixes it himself. When Rigby gets into trouble, he oftentimes helps out, and will even sacrifice himself for others. And whenever Skips isn't the one bailing them out of trouble, it's usually Mordecai who comes up with the idea to save the day. He got stuck in a love triangle and had a few bumps in his friendship with Rigby, but overall, he's a great character. I think his ending with the Batgirl was a happy one, and one he definitely deserved. I don't mean to ruin everyone's fun. Mordecai simping memes are genuinely hilarious. But when the internet's entire perception of one of your favorite characters is tarnished and ruined by those who barely even watched the show, it's kinda hard to keep quiet. It's like how Ace Attorney fans are now stuck with their series only being known for the clown girl. Or how true Batman and Superman fans have to deal with the entire general public misinterpreting their characters. But let me know what you guys think. Do you like Mordecai? And if you didn't, did this video change your mind? Be sure to leave your thoughts in the comment section below, and I'll see you guys next time. Leopold the Brave, out.